There's a lot of great ways to hit the water in the UP, and for this one, all we need is wind.
We get air in that sail, see it filling in. Now straighten it out right now. So I started sailing with my dad probably when I was about 9 years of age.
9 million acres of forest, 1,700 miles of continuous shoreline, 4,300 lakes, 12,000 miles of streams, more than 300 waterfalls, 15 counties, 2 time zones, and 1 area code. Welcome to the Upper Peninsula. Welcome to 906 Outdoors. Sailing dates back thousands of years BC. The term paints a picture of massive ships navigating treacherous seas in the name of exploration, trade, and war. Wooden creations dressed with miles of rope, cannons, and hardware. Sailing is live and well, of course, but nowadays for more pleasureful purposes. The boats have obviously changed, but the sail and the concept remain the same. Something that floats, a sail, and wind. My wife Patty and I had the chance to find out firsthand just how unique and relaxing a cruise on a sailboat can be.
This is forward. If you push it all the way forward, pull it all the way back is reverse, okay? You really don't have to do anything with the gas at this point because we're just going to back out. When you're hanging onto the wheel, you don't let go of it because if it spins out of your hands, we could snap the cable and we don't want to do that. So as we back out, you really don't have to move the wheel more than about that or that to turn it. So you just take it like this, and we're going to back out, and then you're going to throw it in forward, and we're going to just power all the way around the L-dock and work our way out.
And why are you having me do this?
Because this is what everybody who comes on board does, okay? Don't start yet. So I'll be back in about 2 hours. Okay, Patty, put it in reverse. Have to do is get the sail to go exactly in between those lines. A little more. Okay, now straight ahead. Straight that way. Now you're going to turn the boat in front of this boat and head right out the harbor entrance. Now the wind's going to start to push you a little bit faster. Just keep focusing on that red buoy out there and don't hit those boats. Now while you're doing that, we're going to put out a head sail. This is called a furling line right here. It goes all the way to the bow of the boat. When I pull that sail out, this line wraps up. So when we come in, so all I have to do is pull this, bring the sail in. This is called a sheet. We have a starboard and port sheet. Sheets are used to pull the sails in, control the sail. So what I'm going to do is pull this sheet out, and as I do, this line gets wrapped up. But lo and behold, okay, let's turn. Keep heading for that red buoy. Patty, you got her. Okay, you're now sailing the boat. Except for one problem, we still have the engine running, so. Now you got the wheel. Now you're sailing the boat. You're totally in charge.
Oh, that's creepy.
Okay, head right for the red buoy.
906 Outdoors is brought to you by Race Driven, your source for premier power sports products.
We're in the lee of this shore. The great thing about the Escanaba Harbor is when you come in, you're usually in the lee of these trees or the lee of these trees, which means there's not a lot of wind. So you can adjust your sails, you can pull them down, pull them up. It really makes it easy to get the boat set up. And right now we're just catching air basically in the top of this sail But once we get out of the harbor entrance, we'll move a little bit faster. You know, there are little ditties like red right returning. So when you're returning from the ocean to the interior of the U.S., like into the Great Lakes, the red buoys are always on the right side or the starboard side of the boat. And the starboard side is the right side looking forward. Port is the left side looking forward. And there's a lot of nomenclature that you have on sailboats. You have halyards that pull the sails up. Sheets, these are sheets that pull the sails in. A lot of different kind of control lines. The reason for that is because if I said pull in that line and there are two lines there, you might grab the wrong one. Or if I'm up in the bow and I say untie the right sheet. Well, me standing up there, the right sheet might be on the port side. And if I'm here in the cockpit, the right sheet is going to be the starboard side. So it's basically for safety reasons, and so you know exactly what's happening. Okay, now we're getting out into the wind a little bit. Got a nice brisk wind out of the north. Okay, you can start, we're going to head up into the wind. So turn a little bit to your left. Okay, right about there. Okay, now it's just straighten her out. Okay, you can see that sailboat way on the other side. Head right for that. That's your goal. If we had a lot of wind, 15 to 18 knots of air, it would take the bow of that and just drive it up into the wind. So you'd have to fight it a little more on the wheel. Right now it's pretty comfortable. But also we'd be heeled over at about maybe 15 to 20 degrees. And right now we're heeled at about, maybe 5 to 10 degrees. We're running at about 6 miles an hour, which isn't very fast, but the idea of sailing is more about the journey than getting there. Powerboat tends to be more about getting there than the journey. Plus the fact that while you're on board and you shut the engine off, you can have a great conversation with people. And so over the last 30 plus years, when we've taken groups out for donations for things like Lake States Industries, which we've been doing now for the past 3 years, but we've done it for Cancer Society and Bay Cliff Health Camp and a lot of organizations. It really gives people a sense of what it's like to be on a sailboat. And our goal is to put them behind the wheel and let them sail the boat and just see that the mystique of sailing really isn't that much of a mystique. It's a lot of nomenclature that people don't understand, but once they get on board the boat and they realize it's not going to fall over because the mast sits up 54 feet off the water, but the boat weighs about 14,000 pounds and 7 of it's in the keel 6 feet underwater. So it's just getting them to be comfortable with boating, comfortable with sailing, and then have a great experience. And over the years, over the past 30 plus years, we've had groups from all over the world. And my involvement as a high school principal, I was real involved with special education. We have a daughter who was a special ed student, and her involvement with Lake States Industries, which is a training facility for physically and mentally handicapped adults, is a place she's now worked for well over 20 years. And so we just felt real compelled to be a part of that program when I retired. And so now for the past 3 years, we've done sailboat trips exclusively for Lake States Industries. It's $200 for a group of 6. It includes whatever you want to drink within reason. We'll pretty much supply what folks want. And the bottom line is, number one, it's a tax deduction, but it goes to a great cause for a great organization. Okay, this is your boat speed. It tells me that you don't want to jump in the water today because 3 feet down it's 68 degrees. This tells us how deep we are. We just went out of the Orbo Channel, which was about 90 feet. And this instrument over here tells you the wind speed. We got about 6 mile an hour winds. And this shows you, here's the picture of the boat, shows you where the wind's coming from. So we're on what's called a reach. 3 major points of sail: a beat, where you're tight into the wind and your sails are real tight; a reach, where you fall off, sails are out a little bit, and now it's coming at the side of the boat; and a run would put the wind right behind us. You flip this little switch right here, down, clutch, you hit standby or auto, and the boat pretty much steers itself. So you don't have to touch it. See those 2 lines, the red one?
Yep.
When those are both streaming straight back, that sail is trimmed in perfectly. So turn it up into the wind. Wind's coming from here, so we're going to go up. Watch those telltales. That's what they're called, telltales. If I'm here racing, I never look around to see what's there. The only thing I do is I go on those. I'm going to have you turn the boat up into the wind. And I'll give you a preconceived place to head for. And as we go up into the wind, what happens is all the air goes out of our front sail, The mainsail pretty much takes care of itself. It's called self-tending at this point. And so what I'll do is I'll take that sheet off the starboard side over here, because there won't be any tension on it at all. And then the only thing I'm going to do is, as the sail comes around, the wind brings it around, we're going to sheet it in on the port side, pull it in, put it in the self-tending winch, use a winch handle, crank it in, and away we go. You got all that?
No.
Okay. There we go. That sounds like we're ready. 2 wraps on this baby, clockwise. So we're going to just take this off. Okay, go ahead. You got her, kid. Okay, now, no wind in the sail. Wind will bring it across. Okay. The course you have right now is perfect. It's called kind of getting in the groove. The boat heels over and it starts to pick up, and you can just feel that little bit of surge. And now we're doing almost six knots.
906 Outdoors is brought to you by Cooking Wild Seasonings. Make it fresh, make it yours.
A lot of people always have questions about not only the nomenclature, but the different kinds of sails that you have on board. And this is a sloop rig boat. Basically has a head sail, and head sails come in a variety of sizes. You can get a working sail. It's called a 110. It's a smaller sail. It's probably for if you have fairly heavy wind, you'd run that sail, wouldn't heel the boat over a lot. Right now we're running what's called a 150. If you look at the boat as being about 200% long, that sail's about 150% of that. And so that gives us a lot of driving force. That's kind of like having a Corvette and slamming on the gas. That sail really gives us power moving forward. And the mainsail, which is pretty much self-tending, it means it goes up. We have a traveler system with blocks and tackle. We don't have to worry about sheeting it in or out per se, unless we change our point of sail, in which case we can bring the boom in tighter, we can bring the head sail in tighter, but basically we have 2 sails. Most of the sailboats that we have today have very, very user-friendly rigs. Our head sail, for example, is a 150. If we get heavy wind, I can furl that in with the furler by just pulling in this line, and it will actually turn a piece of aluminum extrusion that the sail's through and wrap it up and cut that sail area down. So it's all about sail area. Like right now we're getting pretty good wind. Probably have about 10 miles an hour wind, so we're picking up at about 6 to maybe 7 knots, which is very comfortable, and if Patty doesn't roll us over, we're in good shape. Now the other thing that people don't understand, which is real interesting, is that I actually had Brian in the classroom back in the day when I was a high school counselor and teacher at North Central Schools, and the O'Neill family, of which Patty's a part of, I coached I think 1 or 2 of her brothers in football. So it's interesting how things come full circle. So now what happens if all of a sudden the wind comes up and we have 25 knots of air, which is going to be a little bit too much for this boat. I mean, we could sail through it, it's not going to be comfortable. So what we can do is we can let the sheet on this head sail, the jib, let that sheet go out so there's not a lot of pressure on it. Take the blue furling line over here, and we can actually roll that sail up so we can cut the sail area down, let's say to half. We can also drop this sail down and retie it and have that about 2/3 up. And so it'll be just much more comfortable in terms of sailing the boat. We're going to do the same thing, we're just take it right into the wind. Whenever you're ready. All the air goes out of that head sail, it gets a little limp. We take the sheet off, and as it comes around, there. People always ask me about what's the difference between sailing on the Great Lakes and the ocean, and probably the best thing that I can tell them is that back in the 1980s, I did do the Chicago MAC with a bunch of folks out of Escanaba, and it was interesting to be in Chicago because Ted Turner was in that same race. And Ted, there was the big fanfare with Ted Turner around, and his setup crew set the boat up, and we're doing all the work on our boat, and he's got 15 people doing his work. He just jumps on board and he runs it. And he was kind of expounding on how he was going to show the folks in the Great Lakes how to race and how to sail. And we had about 18 hours of storms, winds probably up to about 50 knots. I mean, it was just a knockdown, drag out kind of sail. And we got into Mackinac, and I have to give Ted Turner credit. He said, you know what, I've never sailed in weather so bad where you get hit four sides at once with swells and the wind. And he said, I have the greatest admiration for Great Lakes sailors because they really do know what they're doing. They could sail anywhere in the world. Sailing the Great Lakes in heavy weather is probably one of the most tasking things that he said he had ever done. So that was kind of nice. So the Great Lakes is basically a sea. It's just a large freshwater sea. And I think as citizens of the state of Michigan, and I think citizens of the U.S., it's a resource that we have to be very careful not to screw up. I'm involved with the Michigan Waterways Commission and have been for quite a few years. And so a big part of what I do on that commission is be concerned about access to the Great Lakes for every citizen in the state of Michigan, but also having harbors of refuge every 30 miles. So if we have problems out in the Great Lakes, there's a harbor you can get to for safety. And so that network of harbors, and I think that commission in terms of taking care of the Great Lakes and keeping it fresh water and pristine water for the citizens, probably one of the greatest things we can do as citizens of the state.
Today's show is brought to you in part by Rapid River Knife Works, home of Michigan's largest custom knife factory showroom.
There's a wreck. The wreck of the Nahon is located just inside of that green can. And even though we probably now, because of the high water, could sail over the top of it, we kind of choose not to. Because 3-4 years ago when we had shallow water, I actually would anchor out there and bring my granddaughter and her friends. We'd swim over and you could stand on the wreck. It would be about waist high. So we try to stay away from that. Okay, we're going to do what's called wing to wing. And we're going to drop this sail out. Now wait until this boom starts to come over. Okay, now bring it back to your left a little bit. Okay, now you're going to keep going left until we get air in that sail. See it filling in? Now straighten it out. Right now, straighten her out. Bring her back around. Okay, whoa, right there. That's called wing to wing. But you really have to pay attention, because what will happen is if you go too far this way, that's going to collapse. So come back to your left. A little more to the left. Okay, right there. Straighten her out. Now come right back. Straighten her out. Well, everybody asks me how long I've been sailing, and the reality is I started sailing with my dad, who was a commercial fisherman out of Escanaba, on ice boats, probably when I was about 7, 8, 9 years of age. I do remember at probably about age 9 or 10 having such a fascination with sailing and wanting to sail so bad that I actually found an old dinghy that was rotted in half. And back in the day, you grabbed a nail and you grabbed a hammer and some sheets and line. And I actually made a little sailboat, and I sailed from Lakeshore Drive down by the athletic field across to Portage Point. I was excited as any little kid could be excited. Got home and my mother was absolutely fit to be tied. I'd left my shoes on the shore, because back then you only had one pair. And they had the police looking for me. They thought I had drowned. I came in the house all enthused and just about got half killed. But I always have had just a fascination with sailing. When I was in high school, I would have given my right arm to be able to get on some of the boats in the harbor. But back then it was just a different social structure, I guess I would have to call it. And I think because of that, when I finally got into sailing myself in bigger boats, we have taken lengths to make sure that we take as many people sailing every year as we can, either through fundraisers or just having folks on the dock, standing looking at the boat as we're getting ready. Probably the best story I have was that we were waiting for a couple from Sweden to take on a 27-foot boat. And, I'm looking for two blonde-haired, blue-eyed people with one little boy, blonde hair. And all of a sudden, here are three people. And I started talking to them while they were from Lansing. And the gal said, well, if we had a life jacket, could we go? And I said, get a life jacket for your son? Yeah, we'll all go. So we had 8 of us on board, and we just had a fabulous time. And, I think we realized that sharing what you have is probably more important than having it. And so we have always, I've given more people invitations to go sailing than I care to even talk about. I would venture to say we've had thousands of people on board. We've taught quite a few folks how to sail who've had that level of interest. We occasionally will take a group of 6 people out. We'll have 1 or 2 of them will say, geez, we'd really like to learn more. And so what we do is we try to tie them up with a Wednesday night racing series, put them on a boat, and instead of just saying sit on the high side, we actually do what we're doing today with Patty. Take the wheel, get a feel for sheeting in, get a feel for coming about, how the boat works, and we've helped develop some boaters in the harbor, which I think is real important. Ever since I got involved with bigger boats, it was kind of buy, fix, and sell. It's just always been kind of a way of life. There's so many aspects to sailing. I mean, how the wind reacts to going over something. It's a 1 to 10 ratio before it gets back to the surface. So if you're sailing along the shore over here, where you've got trees that are 100 feet high, it's a 10 to 1 ratio, and that wind as it comes back down, it's almost like a kid going down a slide. It accelerates, and so if you can find that alleyway, boy, you can really, really take off. So there's all kinds of little aspects, of boating, and it's everything from how to handle a boat to come to a dock, how the wind's going to cause the boat to react, and all those kinds of things. But for the most part, it's just relaxing and enjoying it.
Feel free to join us on Facebook or visit us at 906outdoors.com. Thanks for watching, and we invite you to join us next week for another adventure right here on 906 Outdoors.